The doll. Nestled in the shadow of the jagged cliffs of Maggie Valley stood the crumbling remains of the Weatherby estate. Locals whispered of its dark history, a house left to rot after a series of mysterious disappearances. The estate was avoided, its gaping windows and warped front door a sinister reminder of the unknown. But inside, hidden beneath decades of dust and decay, was something far worse. A doll, unassuming at first glance, but pulsating with an unseen, malevolent power. The doll, nicknamed Margaret for the name stitched across its tattered dress, had a porcelain face cracked like dry earth and vacant, glassy eyes that seemed to follow anyone who dared enter the house. Margaret was not merely a relic of some forgotten child. She was alive, though not in the conventional sense. Her will seeped into the air, a silent predator waiting to ensnare anyone foolish enough to step inside her domain. Emma Thorne, an amateur urban explorer with a taste for thrill-seeking, stood on the front porch of the Weatherby estate one dreary afternoon. The air was heavy with mist, the kind that clung to your skin and muted all sound. She adjusted the straps of her camera and pushed open the front door. It groaned like a dying animal, revealing a cavernous darkness within. Her flashlight sliced through the gloom, revealing peeling wallpaper and sagging furniture. The scent of mildew mixed with something sour, something alive. She stepped inside, the floorboards creaking under her boots. As she moved deeper into the house, she spotted the doll perched on a faded armchair. Margaret seemed to glow in the dim light, her glass eyes glittering. Emma felt a strange pull, as if the doll were silently calling to her. Against her better judgment, she stepped closer and crouched before it. "That's creepy," Emma muttered, snapping a photo. But when the flash illuminated the doll's face, she gasped. The cracks in its porcelain seemed to shift, forming a grotesque smile. Emma staggered back, her head swimming. An unbearable pressure built behind her eyes, and she felt her limbs move without her consent. Her hands, trembling, reached into her bag and pulled out a shard of broken mirror she had found earlier in the house. "No," she whispered, but her voice sounded distant, as if underwater. Her own hand brought the shard to her face, carving jagged lines into her cheeks. Blood dripped onto the floor as she sobbed, powerless to stop herself. Days later, a group of thrill-seekers arrived at the estate, lured by Emma's cryptic posts about the house. They found her lying in a corner, her face a canvas of raw flesh and dried blood. Her eyes darted to the group, wild with terror, but she couldn't warn them. Margaret had stolen her voice. As the group explored, Margaret's influence spread like a contagion. One by one, they fell under her control, their eyes glazing over as they turned on each other. The once quiet house became a cacophony of screams and violent thuds. Alex, the group's leader, was the last to succumb. He found himself drawn to the doll, compelled to sit before it. Margaret's voice echoed in his mind, a soft, childlike whisper, "Fix your face for me." Unable to resist, Alex reached for a rusty nail lying nearby and pressed it to his lips. His body convulsed as he dragged the nail across his mouth, carving a grotesque grin into his flesh. Word of the grisly events at the Weatherby estate spread through Frost Valley, drawing the curious and the reckless. Each new visitor fell victim to Margaret's influence, their bodies and minds twisted into unrecognizable forms. The house became a prison of madness, its walls echoing with the laughter of the doll and the anguished cries of her victims. Among the onlookers was Detective Lila Graves, a woman hardened by years of investigating the unexplainable. She arrived at the estate with a single goal: to uncover the truth. Armed with a flashlight, a notebook, and a gun, she entered the house alone. The air inside was suffocating, thick with the stench of blood and rot. Lila's flashlight flickered, casting jagged shadows on the walls. She spotted Margaret almost immediately, sitting in her chair like a queen on her throne. Lila felt the pull of the doll's gaze but resisted, focusing instead on the notebook she had found near one of the bodies. The pages were filled with frenzied scrawls. "She sees me. She is inside me. Don't look at her." But it was too late. Lila's flashlight caught Margaret's face, and the detective froze. The doll's eyes seemed to glow, and a voice filled Lila's mind. "Join us." Just as Lila felt herself losing control, she remembered the small crucifix her grandmother had given her, tucked away in her coat pocket. She grasped it tightly, the metal digging into her palm. The pressure in her head lessened, and the whispers faded. Margaret's smile twisted into a snarl. Lila raised her gun and fired, shattering the doll's porcelain face. But instead of victory, the house began to quake. The doll's shards glowed red-hot, and from them emerged a swarm of tiny spider-like creatures. They scuttled toward Lila, their legs clicking against the floor. She screamed, swatting at them, but they were relentless. As the creatures swarmed her, Lila realized the horrifying truth. Margaret was not the source of the evil. She was merely a vessel, a conduit for something far older and far worse. When the townsfolk of Maggie Valley found the house the next morning, it was empty. The bodies of Emma, Alex, and the others were gone, as was Detective Graves. The doll's chair sat vacant, though the faint sound of laughter echoed through the halls. Days later, a child playing near the cliffs of Maggie Valley found a broken porcelain doll with cracks like veins running across its face. Drawn to its eerie beauty, the child brought it home, unaware of the nightmare they had just unleashed. Margaret had found a new home, and her curse was far from over.